Singers, today I wanted to give you 8 tips. These are 8 things that recording engineers and music producers kind of cringe if you do. And so this is like a heads up warning. Don't do these 8 things. If you have some rebuttals you'd like to throw my way, or perhaps you have some suggestions, things that singers do that drive you crazy when they come to the studio, let me know in the comments below. My name is Becky. This is the Empowered Indie Artists YouTube channel and podcast. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll like. Let's get to it. Okay, so seriously, 8 things singers do that drive me crazy when they come to their recording session. Now, I'm a singer too, so I have nothing against singers, and a lot of this stuff is really kind of I've grown to find okay and fine. People don't know, and so they just need to know, or they just need to ask permission. Okay, so number 1, bring food. Please don't bring food to the recording session. If you ask ahead of time, or if you are going to a studio where there's space that's apart from all the equipment, it's probably fine. But I always suggest ask ahead of time if you are going someplace where it's like in their living quarters, then a lot of times they're like, please don't bring your hamburgers in my living room, or just the simple fact that you could possibly, spill something on some expensive equipment. That would not be good. But I just think it's common courtesy to ask ahead of time if you're like, man, I haven't had a chance to eat, which there's kind of a subcategory. If you are the one recording and you're eating, like I brought food, I'm eating, and then I'm recording, that's probably not a good idea, and as a matter of fact, really amateur. A singer, most singers know after they are a little seasoned and they've been doing it a while, that trying to sing right after you've eaten is usually unfruitful. Just you're gonna need a little bit of time for everything to come wash down. You might be burping a little bit while you're trying to sing, so it's best to not eat and then try to record right after. So if you haven't had a chance to eat, perhaps ask your engineer, if I am running behind schedule, I really need to eat something or my session will not go well. Can I come half an hour later? Can I come an hour later? And hopefully they'll be flexible enough to do that. If not, you might have to reschedule for another day and plan your day better. All right, that's that. Number 2, put drinks on top of equipment or pianos. Don't put anything on top of a piano, even just books, papers, whatever. People are usually pretty sensitive about what goes on top of a piano. Pianos are very, very expensive, and they're, wood with finish, and anything gets on there that can scuff it, or, that's wet, can cause permanent damage. So please don't put anything on top of a piano. If you have your, you know, coffee or your warm tea or anything like that that you drink while you are singing, find a place to put it that is not next to any type of equipment. In my studio, the power box to my microphone is kind of tucked against the wall, but a lot of times I'll notice singers putting their water right next to it. If it were to tip over, it would blow the power box, and I don't know if that would cause damage to my microphone, and it might, but it would certainly end our session. So just be aware of equipment around. Some studios have little tables where you can put drinks and stuff. Number 3. Now this one's kind of funny because it doesn't make me mad, but I usually have to say something to singers, and I am a singer, so I totally understand this. But let's say you just recorded a passage, and I'll say, okay, let's listen. And I start playing it back, and I can hear that the singer is singing along with themselves. I have to actually stop and say, please don't sing, let's just listen. And I have to do that all the time because singers instinctively want to sing along with themselves. And like I said, I totally get that. I do it all the time too. I have a hard time not singing along. And so just when you're in recording mode, be really really careful to make sure that you're paying attention to what your engineer is saying. Like right now, we're listening. Right now, it's okay to sing along because we want to maybe find some harmonies. Just really stay focused on what the engineer is doing. And if they're playing back what you just recorded, it's most likely that they're trying to listen for something. Number four, bringing friends or family to the session. I have people that ask and say, "Hey, is it okay if I bring my boyfriend or my mom or whatever?" And almost always I say, "Of course, that's totally fine." I have a separate room where people can hang out while we're recording if that's easier for the singer. But it's good to just ask ahead of time because every studio situation is going to be different. I have had situations where I've had to ask someone to, please don't invite so and so to your next session because I think you don't sing as well when they're around, or it becomes more confrontational because you're arguing with them. It's usually like a teenager and a parent. Usually I have to tell parents, you know what? They're going to do better if you're not in the room while we're recording. Um, and I, being a music producer, audio engineer, but also someone who is used to coaching, they're more inclined to listen to my feedback and suggestions than the parents. And that's just simply because of the dynamic between a child and a parent. It is, you know, packed with layers and layers of complexity, where the relationship with me is they just respect me as someone who is a professional. And of course, they're going to listen to me. And they're more inclined to listen to me if their parent is in the room, isn't in the room, looking at them like, hey, are you listening? I've just found that the dynamic with a parent and a kid in a studio is most, like 90% of the time, not good. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent. But if you're bringing friends and they are like giggly or making you giggly, that can really slow down the session. But if your friends are professional but are also kind of an emotional support for you, just ask ahead of time. I'm sure most of the time your studio, the person running your session, will be like, absolutely, bring your friends. Number five, at the beginning of the session, it becomes really clear that you're not super prepared, that you're still kind of figuring out how it goes, or you haven't made some decisions about your melody or your words. I mean, sometimes it just happens. And I honestly have been in some really great sessions where we were changing lyrics, we were changing melodies, we were changing the key and all of that. Sometimes that happens. You just have to go with it. But usually it's happening when it's an inexperienced singer, when they come and their nerves have gotten the better of them and they just have not let the song settle inside of their voice well enough that it might take them a while to get going. And again, if you're working with someone, that's really patient, or like me, I feel like I'm really patient in the studio, but I think it's because I'm a singer and worked with singers for so many years that I understand how nerve-wracking, especially that first session, can be. So I feel confident that if someone is nervous and they're having a hard time getting going, I can, it's really just a matter of getting comfortable, which takes a little bit of time. But if you show up and you're completely unprepared, that is really unprofessional and, disrespectful to the people's time that you are working with. So don't do that. Number six, asking for a key or tempo change in the middle of the session. It, it Yeah, just don't do that, okay? It's something that you should have figured out if you were really, really practicing before the session and you did mock sessions, which I think is a really good idea. Um, then that is something that you should have already figured out and been able to say, before the session, a week before the session, hey, is there any way we can change the tempo? Is there any way we can change the key? And that creates a lot less of a stressful situation for your engineer. Number seven, coming to the recording session and you're sick. Like, oh, sorry, I've got a scratchy throat today, or I just started coughing this morning. I would so much rather people, text me an hour before the session and say, I don't know what's going on. My throat is hurt. Is there any way we can reschedule rather than just show up? And I don't know if it's this like concept of, well, you just go, you just do it. But you have to think about the fact that you're showing up for something that, I've blocked out a chunk of time for. Plus, I don't want to get sick. That for me is the biggest thing is that when I'm working with people a lot, when they show up sick or their kid is sick or something, I'm probably going to get it because, you're touching things that I'm going to touch. So, anyway, don't come sick. And if you can, just text and reschedule. This is why I don't have any kind of cancellation fees or, some studios they need to have people in the studio recording all the time or they're not making any money. And I think a lot of producers are not like that, where a lot of times the recording sessions are just a part of everything else I do. Where I only have maybe a few recording sessions a week and they're just, little blocks of time set aside. If we need to reschedule it for the next day or the next week because you're sick, it's really easy for me to do. And it doesn't have any impact on my, ability to earn a living. So, anyway, I think it's best to, if you can clarify that with your studio or with your producer ahead of time, that will avoid any of those kind of awkward situations. And number 8, my last thing, adjusting the mic stand. I probably did this when I was, a singer showing up at a studio. If the mic stand looked like it was too low, I probably, because I have the mindset of like being helpful and independent. But if you have a mic stand like mine, it's just full of all these different complex levers and mechanics. And honestly, you could hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing with this thing. It is a monster. There's some that are a little more easy, but I still would really I appreciate it when people just wait and let me do it. Because sometimes I'm working on, setting up the certain things in the session, getting other things settled, and the mic stand's not quite right. And the singer's like, hey, this is too short. This is too short. I'm like, hang on, I'll get there. So anyway, that's just kind of another little, please just don't do that. It's probably best. If you have any thoughts, if you disagree with me on any of these, let me know in the comments. And thanks for joining me today, just for being here. I do have a freebie for you. There's a link in the description below. It is the Releasing Music Checklist. It goes over all of the things that you need to be thinking about as you're preparing for your release. 3 months before, 2 months before, 6 weeks before, 3 weeks before. There's a series of things that you need to be taking care of besides just making the music. So I hope you'll grab that. It's totally free, and I'll see you next time.